All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Black Room Secrets. So tonight we have Lee Guentert.
Yeah, yeah.
Got that right. So, Lee, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, what's up, Serge?
So, little background. I met Lee through the the YouTube metal community that Jeff, aka Gas Mask and Hand Grenades, introduced me to, which is a lot of very cool people. And you know, uh, a lot of people who mostly talk about music and passion about music. But then I started following you guys on Instagram and stuff, and then I was like, holy shit, this dude is an artist, and not just any artist, but fucking amazing work.
Thank you.
And I main reason for at least this series that I do here is really like I want to chat with people who are passionate about something, and that you fit the bill for me, and I feel like uh, you know, if anybody who hasn't run into you, hopefully will get to check out something cool, and certainly we'll talk about your own YouTube series.
Sweet.
Um, but if if and by the way, his Instagram is literally with two underscores in
Yeah,
between.
right in the middle. Yep. I think the wonder score was already taken when I got that like 5 years ago. So
Bastards.
yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but anybody watching this, please check it out. You just did uh, an amazing job for Jeff of
Yeah,
gas masks and hand grenades. And I wasn't sure what to expect when Jeff told me. It's like, oh, he's just gonna do like some art for like a T-shirt or something. I'm like, all right, but I wasn't expecting it to be something so epic.
yeah. I mean, basically, the Jeff was smart in giving me a lot of creative freedom and letting me kind of do my thing, and he just trusted me with it. So that's definitely the way that I prefer to work. And it's not that I can't take outside ideas and stuff. It's just, you know how it is. Sometimes somebody gets fixated on something that just won't work with the composition. And that was not the case at all in this scenario. So him giving me a lot of freedom, I basically did a drawing that I wanted to do anyways, and then just happened to work with him. And that's like that perfect
Right.
marriage for a commission, where I
Yeah.
want to do it anyway. So cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like as somebody who has commission art from people, I always like I'm not sure like okay how much specifics do I want to give.
Hmm.
'Cause I want it to be something that speaks to me, but I also don't want to micromanage the process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
It's a balancing act.
the whole reason I'm commissioning art is because I like their style and I like their approach. So you have to let them breathe.
Yeah. Dude, I gotta say, I liked your intro video a lot, man. I was like, dude, I'm like about to go to a rave right now. Like, I love the music and just like I'm feeling pumped up. Like, you did a good job with that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I was like, all right, I need to put something together, and I have no skills in like video editing or anything, but I found the music and that was cool. So I was just like, all right, let me try to like at least patch up some still images, which is the one thing I can do, Photoshop
Yeah.
or whatever. So
It was like if like a goth rave party and like a cult indoctrination video like combined. That's what I like got out of it. It was cool.
I believe it was originally labeled like Cyberpunk Club or something. So
Yeah.
which hey, it works for me. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't make music myself like that. Not just play a little bass, and that's about it.
Bass. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and that usually requires more people to play with. You know,
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a drummer, so I can relate. There's very. Rarely lead drums.
yeah,
Although,
yeah,
like, I mean, it was funny. I was listening to, I think it was Heavy Metallurgy. Alan was talking about he hates it when the drummers take center stage, and I was thinking, man, I think some of the best like metal bands ever had very strong drummers that really like showcase their thing. So you always gravitate towards your instrument and what that when a song is built around that,
for sure.
that's
Yeah,
when it really really resonates. So like I love really groovy music. It's all about the drums in the pocket and stuff like that. And I mean, I love great guitar playing, but if you can really just get me like head bobbing, and then there's like some interesting catches and different time signatures and stuff like that that keeps my interest, but it gels in. I mean, that's like the ideal music for me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, I guess with a bass background, I do gravitate a little bit towards the rhythm section in general because
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I do like the grooves. I like the beat, and I appreciate bands that make a good effort out of it rather than you were just throwing something generic in there, or I sometimes it lets you down when that part isn't.
Oh,
It's like it's like the early Metallica records where you don't hear the bass player, right?
oh
it's like
yeah, dude.
it's like, oh man, I know the music is good, but I wish I could fatten up the sound. You know?
I mean, I think a bad rhythm section is perhaps the reason why some local bands never get to that next level in a lot of cases. I mean, it could be a number of things, but it is pretty common that if you don't have a drummer who can keep time or a
Mm-hmm.
bass player who's like in the pocket, knows what they're doing, like it holds a band back a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Because with guitar, if you're self-aware, you just don't overextend. But with drumming, yes, it has to have that self-awareness, but like drummers who like are just like they're way too eager to prove themselves. It drives me fucking insane. And you know what I mean, right? Like it's just like, dude, why'd you try that fill? You just fumbled, and like five people now in the band are like having to recover it. And it's like it's embarrassing sometimes.
It is, and I always felt like a little bit pressure of this on stage because there's a fair amount of pressure on the rhythm section because if you
Oh
fuck
yeah.
up, it wrecks the whole song. So I've definitely got a death stare from like our guitar player a couple of times, and I'm like, fuck.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, like our old our old drummer had this tendency to, as he got like more into a song, more excited of a song, he would speed up.
Oh yeah.
It's a little bit imperceptible, but like beginning to end, the song was like just
Yeah.
crazy faster. It's like, dude, just relax.
Yeah.
It's not easy to keep like keep that
No, it
metronome
isn't.
beat. It's those like the drummers that play with like industrial bands.
Mhm.
I mean, I know it's a click track and everything that you got to follow, but still, it's there's that robotic uh ability that not everybody have. Even like bands like where you're not doing anything complicated like ZZ Top, but
Right.
they had that drummer who was fucking he was a metronome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was just a pocket, dude. It's great.
So I want to get into how how you got started or how your process I guess evolved and
Sure.
what got you started?
Just with visual art.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my art journey, like overall, it is intertwined with music a lot. So it was always an impulse, like I was always compelled to draw. And I was raised by a family that was very friendly and supportive, but they weren't like artists themselves per se. Although my mom is like actually a really good artist, but she never has seen herself that way. So it's
Mm,
kind of interesting, but I'll spare you the details there. But I was raised in a family of sports people, specifically tennis. So I'm the middle child, older sister, younger brother, both extremely athletically gifted. I'm modestly athletically gifted. I didn't have the coordination sometimes like others. One second. I got a little thing that popped up. I hope this does not crash my computer. If it does, I'll come right back, but it
yeah,
shouldn't.
no worries.
But I might just bounce because this thing pops up every once in a while. It's so weird. But staying on track, assuming I did everything right. I was always drawing, and it was always dinosaurs and stuff like that, and monsters. And
Mm,
I was obsessed, man. And then when Pokemon came out when I was 6, it like changed my world, man. So you'll probably see as I'm talking and trying to tell a good story here, but like I never really thought of art like fine art like until like not that long ago. I was bored by like Renaissance paintings and stuff like that. I didn't have an appreciation for it. I was inspired by flashy, primarily Japanese art, and then also monsters and psychedelia and Godzilla and shit like that. So like when I saw those illustrations on box art or in game manuals or commercial art, just like even when I'm at a store, that's what I viewed art as. And like I still kind of am attached to that as primarily an illustrator and not really into fine art that much. Um, so when I was like 6, obsessed with Pokemon, my source of creativity was all right, I got these composition notebooks and I'm in class. I made up 150 of my own Pokemon. I wish I kept those things. But
Wow,
I just
thanks.
made my own Pokemon with their own evolutions, and like my form of art was literally the uh a very basic version of concept art. It was drawing monsters and making up stuff and using my imagination. So people like, and I would like go through grade school and stuff, and there'd be people who are really interested in art class. But like when I was actually in art class, like sculpting clay and like doing these projects, I mean, I was like good, but I hated it.
Mm,
I couldn't stand it, especially sculpture. I did not like it at all. And there were like kids that were like really gifted and they're like drawing like pretty realistic squirrels and like portraits of people. And I was like, man, why would I ever want to do this? I just want to draw monsters all day.
right.
So like I always kind of saw myself as like the kid who can draw, but kind of an outsider. Like I didn't really fit in with other artists because I found a lot of that shit just boring. Like why would I want to draw a helicopter that already exists? Everything was about creating new stuff.
Mm,
So that compulsion, went to middle school, high school, and then I don't want to get too much in the details, but psychedelics changed my life. Like they changed my perspective on art and what art could be. And I when I started doodling and doing more stream of consciousness stuff, and I saw Salvador Dali, that was like the first fine artist that I truly loved. So that kind of stuff, just it was like a teacher in a way. So I was obsessed with Dali, but then I was also really interested in things like Robert Williams' lowbrow art. So he's the founder of Juxtaposed magazine. I didn't know that at the time, but I was in college at this point, and I saw Robert Williams work for the first time, and I was just amazed because it took some of the concepts of Dali in terms of being pretty realistic, but then there's like he added like a comic and a lowbrow aspect, and I just loved it because my entire life it was fine art, high art, portraiture. That shit's boring. Like I stood by that for a long time. And I wasn't like closed minded when I was talking with people, but I had my convictions. I had my ideas on what I thought interesting art was, and it had to come from imagination. Fast forward as I get older and I'm trying to like learn techniques because eventually you hit a ceiling. That's when I started to really expand, start drawing, people, start drawing things around me. And like it really changed my whole thing of like, if you learn how the real world works, your imagination is just going to grow even stronger. But for a long time, it was all insular, not about drawing representational things. So
mm,
I think that's one of the differences maybe in my like art background is yes, it's self-taught. And with it being self-taught, I had like some self-limiting beliefs, but also ones that helped carve out a unique style because I wasn't just trying to draw objects that I would see or people as they were. It was all about just drawing shapes on paper and then piecing it together, stream of consciousness style. So I don't know if that was boring or whatever, but
no, no, no. It always fascinates me, and I can relate to that. Not as an artist because I can't draw, man. I would doodle a lot in like the
yeah,
sides of my notebooks in school because I was a kid that was kind of bored in class, and I just I would draw whatever I could, and yeah, sometimes it was just kind of abstract shit, geometrical figures, because that's just how my brain works. I can't. For the love of me, I can't draw like realistic things, or especially people or things like that. I
Yeah.
I remember in high school I took a class called Anyone Can Draw, almost as a challenge, because I'm like, I don't think I can, you know. And we had to like draw like a shoe or something by like one of those like kind of just look at it blindly and draw. And I was having the hardest time. The only time where I felt like okay, it was kind of working when we did like perspective drawing of like rulers, because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I'm a more geometrical mathematical guy. It's like I can if you let me use a ruler to draw a straight line, I can do that.
Yeah, that stuff's that that uh that stuff can be challenging, really technical, almost like architectural style drawing where it's a little more math based. That's a whole
Yeah,
different part of the brain. And I'm better at it now because I think before I act, but it goes against those impulses that I was talking about of like piecing things together as they come with perspective and all those things. You have to really be, it rewards preparedness, you know?
yeah. But growing up, my parents were uh, pretty cultural. So they'll take me to museums from an early age, and
Yeah.
we would look at art. I mean, when we were immigrating to United States, we lived in Italy for a little bit, so I got to see like the museums in Florence and Sistine Chapel and all of that, like all that like classic art. And this is like as a 11, 12-year old, and I'm like, okay, I don't, it looks nice, I guess. But it's people. So
Yeah,
I didn't.
I would have been bored as hell, man. I
I
like it just didn't click.
Yeah, it didn't click, and and maybe this is cliche, but hey, you mentioned it right when I ran across Dali. That's when I think it's like, huh, it was surrealism in general, but I think
Yeah.
especially Dali. I was like, I don't know. Okay, now you're taking things that exist in the world, but you're changing them, and you're presenting them in a way that doesn't exist in the world. And now I'm interested.
Yeah.
Now it becomes like a little bit of a mystery almost. And and again, in my mind, it wasn't something that I could necessarily create myself, but I enjoyed looking at what people create.
There's like more deliberate choices too, Like it was maybe earlier examples of me seeing somebody who like had a vision and wanted to disrupt things and like okay, I'll draw a giant black telephone on this landscape. Like that's like such a deliberate choice, whereas when I look at the Renaissance stuff at the time, it was like some king or some pope just wanted you to paint that. Like why would I care? And then I also was pretty anti-religious, so all that religious stuff just really rubbed me
Right.
the wrong way, man. Like not that I was raised in like, my family was Catholic, but they weren't like diehard Catholics, I guess you could say. Like they were, I had to go to church, but it wasn't like I never felt like I was being oppressed. But given teenage rebellious stuff, I hated it, and I wasn't. I never felt welcome. I always felt like an outsider there too.
Yeah, I can understand that. I grew up in a completely secular environment, so in a way, it was only later that like, okay, I should at least read up just to get the references and all the books and art
Yeah.
and shows that you see, because there's a lot of references to whether it's the Bible or over religious concepts. But yeah, as a younger person, and then for a year I ended up going to like a yeshiva, like a Jewish religious school, and I'm like, I so don't belong here. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it's not for me. Um, but again, I do think there's mythology in general is good fodder for
Oh yeah, for sure.
for creating art, and for references, and for how you want to interpret things.
I was always interested in Greek and Roman mythology, with the, dragons and Cerberus and all the, I thought that stuff was way more interesting than, you know, Catholic religion and all that imagery.
Oh, for sure. I
Yeah.
feel like that mythology is way more interesting. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how they got people to switch over. You know,
Maybe
even
just
or
a
like
little more realistic. I don't know.
yeah, or like Scandinavian mythology.
Yeah.
I grew up with in a Slavic environment, and there's some stuff there which mostly just became like fairy tales. But even then, like if you look at American fairy tales, it's very Disneyfied. If you look at like Slavic or maybe Germanic uh, fairy tales, they're dark as shit, man.
Yeah.
They're
More
and there's
punishing.
a lot of times there's no happy ending. It's just grim shit, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, sometimes I feel like it was meant to scare children. Um, but also lends itself to again certainly a lot of metal bands ran with that and made their own interpretations of it. So
Yeah. I think it's
I
cool
think
source material. I think it's like the closer I am to when the creator was creating work, I'm more interested. The farther away it gets, the less interested I get in a lot of cases. Not always, but uh, I don't know. I mean, I definitely want to come across because I do feel like I'm a pretty open minded person, but I what is art without some strong opinions and a stance? If you just are kind of wishy washy about everything, what are you trying to say with your work? So
right.
I I do
Well,
find, you got to just kind of follow your instincts on what really grabs your attention and then stick to that and evolve and open up your mind. But I'm not all of a sudden going to start doing stuff that's way more Renaissance looking because that shit really bores me, man, in a lot of cases.
yeah. Although I really love the couple of the Reaper watercolor
Yeah.
studies you posted because man, that's I don't know. I first of all, in that anyone can draw class, we did do watercolor, and I hated it
Oh,
deep
so tough.
deep and passionately. It's so technically difficult. Well, at least for me,
Oh,
I don't
it's
know how.
very difficult.
And I've seen people do like realistic watercolor, which is insane to me. But
Oh, yeah.
but I do feel like it lends itself better to something a little bit more impressionist, like what you
Hmm.
did. But yeah, I love like the warmth in those in the drawings you did,
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
contrasted with the subject matter.
Yeah. I want to do, there's a big piece I'm going to work on. I'm doing a drawing right now. It's gonna be pen and ink, and I think it's gonna turn out pretty good. I'm feeling pretty strong on it right now. It's gonna have like a narrative element, but this next watercolor, it's gonna be like a mixed media kind of piece. And man, I don't know. Watercolor is like so much more of a performance than pen and ink, where you're kind of like chipping away at the puzzle, and each mark kind of like adds up. Whereas like watercolor, first of all, there's like a moment of just complete chaos, and you got to like just lose yourself in the chaos and just trust you're going to get through it. But my approach is heavily wet on wet. So I'm
Mm,
gonna I'm gonna get this giant piece of paper out. I'm gonna put it down. I'm gonna like get my sponge ready. I'm gonna get everything ready. I'm gonna be like, all right, let's do this. Because if you don't get that first wash right, I literally just I'm adding 8 more hours because I have to redo everything. So like the stakes are there, man, and that's what you don't get. I like digital art. I'm not throwing shade, but not those stakes. That's the shit that's exciting, man. And when you pull it off, it feels even better. So like, I'll have to be really focused and like really just trust myself because I get the sponge out. I'm just gonna damp everything really quickly. Get the biggest brush I have and just and like you don't get to do that often, in art, or at least my approach, because so much of it is just really technical little stuff. But I'm going to be making these sweeping big gestures, and then eventually it'll tighten up. But watercolor, man, it's a beast because of that performance aspect, or like that's how I view it. Maybe based on being like a musician and stuff, like just being in the moment, you really lose yourself with watercolor. And I have to be like, okay, where's my wife going to be? Where's my dog going to be? Because I can't have any distractions. It is complete chaos and zen at the same time. So I'm very passionate about watercolor because once you start doing it and you realize how difficult it is, but when you get it right, it's like addicting.
mm.
So
Yeah.
I'm talking shit about Renaissance, but then I look at shit like all those really good watercolor artists like John Singer Sargent and stuff from like the 20th century. Like that stuff excites me because I can see every stroke, I can dissect it. It's weird how, but then it's pretty boring subject matter. It's just executed really well. So it's
No,
interesting that I don't mean to be hypocritical with just kind of boring subject matter, but some of that stuff amazes me just because the technical showmanship is so high.
I've there's an artist I follow, and I'm talking about him a little bit more when we get to the next topic. But he posts a lot and talks about the creative process. So as uh, someone who isn't really exposed to that, it's interesting for me to at least learn. But sometimes he'll just post like obsessive things, but just about brushstrokes.
Yeah.
And I think details like that, like I would never think of. But
Oh yeah.
I guess it allows him to construct things in the way that he wants to.
What type of medium does he predominantly use?
Um, so this is Stephen Archer. Um, he does multiple things. He goes, he does digital, he does oils,
Oh,
or
okay.
acrylics. I don't know, I'm not really sure, but I think mainly that's his physical. He's also a musician, plays in a band, and
Nice.
multiple bands, I should say. Really, one of those like creatives that just lives on creation, which is
love those
very,
people.
very cool and must be very difficult. But uh, you know, I'm glad those people exist, and even though it seems like that's a little bit more difficult these days.
We'll have to see, man. At the end of the day, like the artists who do it because they love it will stay alive. That's how I see it. You might have to be very adaptable, and the making money is going to get more difficult. I mean, I don't see how it couldn't with the change of technology and everything, but the passion can still be there. I'm very convinced of that because there's just too many artists who love it so much that it's just going to go away. And sometimes I get kind of down when you know, I understand what the future probably will be like with, AI, generative AI specifically. But our art will still survive. There's still a path. Just get undeniably good and stay in your lane. And not
I
that
think,
anybody's asking for my advice, but that's my advice: is get so good that people can't ignore you, and eventually a style will come out, and that's important. Those two things: being really damn good and having a style. But the style part just comes from getting really good. So you can make master copies. You can trace for a while. You can do whatever. Just get good and find the ways to improve as rapidly as you can.
yeah,
But my journey, right, had a shit ton of dabbling in imagination. So you have to make sure you leave space for that imagination part too. Because when you're trying to work on just technical chops, you're really not being that imaginative. So you have to balance both of those beasts really, really well. So that's mini rant, but that'd be like
yeah.
my advice for somebody.
So I wanted to ask, where is art in your life currently? Like, is this I guess from like a hobby to like a profession spectrum?
So there's a I'm just gonna speak my mind, and I'm not gonna worry about coming across as humble. Is that fair?
No, please do. I
Okay.
think we can be pretty open here.
All right, because I don't like I'm not like I don't have like a giant ego. I have some ego, but not a giant one. But I think my skill set is pretty dang close to professional level. But I don't know if I want the lifestyle of it being my full time career. So that's where I'm at. Where I think I can compete with professionals, but I don't want to actually be a professional. If
Yeah,
that makes sense, because it comes with a bunch of compromises. It comes with working with a lot of other people, and I like art being this thing that I can pour myself into at this point in time. So it's not to say that I can't adjust and go more professional, but Right now, I like my balance of having a career and art, and then I just want to get really, really good at art and do my thing. And then if people want to buy it or I want to get commissioned, awesome. So that's kind of how I feel like where I'm at. So I wouldn't call it a hobby because I think I'm a little past that, but I'm definitely not full time or wanting to go full time. Is that a fair
Yeah.
answer?
No, absolutely. And I think that's, I mean, if I could create, I think that's where I would be, because
Yeah.
I would want I would want the space to be able to create somewhat on my terms. Or
Yeah.
I guess I can say I do that in photography, right? Photography, I guess some people may call it art.
I
I'm
mean,
not
I do. Yeah.
I'm not
I
going to
view it
call
as art.
myself an artist, but at this point, I've done, I don't know, almost 20 years of photography. I don't
I
know.
view you as an artist. I don't know why you don't. I've always viewed you that way. You're just
But
not a drafts person or a painter.
yeah. And I have to say, like, I'd much rather do just a shoot, like a trade shoot, where we're just both trying to create something that, that speaks to us, rather than somebody messaging me is like, okay, can I pay you to do this? And a lot of times the this is something I just don't care about.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no thanks. I have that luxury because I have a career, a more boring career, but at least it pays the bills, right? So I mean, people
Same
are,
here, man.
yeah. In photography, you're kind of, if you want to make money in photography, you pretty much have to do either weddings or you know or really hustle yourself trying to compete in a pretty crowded area with family shoots or whatever.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Then you
very
lose
very
the
few
joy.
people work in creative photography. You can get into that, but it's not easy, and probably be harder now.
Yeah, and like I think that's the other thing too is how people define success. I bet 3 years ago, I would have defined success as being able to leave my full time job. But actually, after doing the podcast and talking with all these other artists, um, I don't view success that way anymore. I view success as creating mostly on your own terms with input from other people and living the lifestyle that you want. And the lifestyle I want is working a completely separate career job that I enjoy for different reasons because it fulfills other interests of mine. And then this is my passion. This is like my reason, but it gives me the freedom to do that and to also like not to worry about deadlines and worry about the money aspect.
Right.
For me, it's
Or the client says like, could you change this and put this in there? And
well, I know I'll do
yeah,
some of that. It depends. Well, traditional media, you got to. Whenever I work with somebody, I have to be very clear. Like, there's some wiggle room, and I can make some adjustments, but I'll keep you as informed as possible and be a really good communicator. But there's a point where it's hard to go back, and like
yeah,
you got to kind of just trust your instincts. And like,
yeah,
if there's somebody who does an excellent job of like setting expectations and knowing when to like stand up for himself and like how to work with clients, and this is for anybody who's interested in visual art. All my conversations with Brad Moore, so he's done a lot of painting covers. He's an expert at that, at like that setting expectations and the wheeling and dealing part, because like that's very important when you're working in this, working with bands in this industry. They have
oh
to.
yeah,
There has to
right.
be that respect of your expertise, or else you're not going to get the best product. Ultimately. So I'll be doing I think towards the end of this month, I'll be releasing another video with Brad. He's going to be a regular contributor on the show. He's just a well of knowledge and always open to share.
That's cool. Hey, Kellen. Yeah, I I do share some kink artists that I find to be unique and good.
Well,
Amber,
that's kind of what you do, right? Is that what
yeah,
you call it? It's
yeah.
cool,
I
man.
mean,
It's cool.
photography. I certainly do kink photography, but yeah, Amber Carr is a really really good artist who just happens to do kink, and um, at least in my estimation, my aesthetics. Um, I mean, I look if you're if you're getting paid at all for your work, and at least
Yeah,
some of your work, I think that counts as pro.
I don't know, man. I mean, that's another thing I think about a lot. How do you here? I'll put it on you, and then I'll explain my thing. How do you define competitive?
In what, I guess, in what
So
context?
so do you see competitive as a pro or a con? Like, what's your connotation with it? Is it mostly a positive thing or mostly a negative thing? You know what I mean? When you hear that, does it
Ju-
make you?
just the word?
Yeah, yeah. What does that word
Um,
give you?
hmm, man, that's a good question because I think I'm not a super competitive person. So to
Okay.
me, it sometimes carries a bit of a negative connotation for me. Like I don't know, like let's say video games, right? If the game is hyper competitive, I'm probably don't want to
Yeah,
don't want to join. I play video
I get
games.
you there.
That's an escapism. I was like, oh, let me see what cool shit I can do in this game. Like explore, find interesting things.
I'm
I,
with you
I,
on
I
that.
play RPGs a lot.
Oh,
I
same. Yeah.
I'm not interested in you know, even though I've played first person shooters or whatever. But if it's like one of those like hyper competitive,
Oh, I hate
Overwatch
it.
or whatever, that type of thing, it's just not for me. So
Yeah. No, I'm with you on video games. That's not where I want to channel it, you know. But like one thing that I think I get a pulse on like my guests on the show when I talk about these kind of things. But one way I do think that I view things maybe differently than some other visual artists is like I said, I was raised in a very competitive sports family. And with that, those principles have stuck with me. They're deeply ingrained, you know what I mean? So some people they have the connotation, and this is just their what's that's their perspective, you know what I mean? But they have a connotation that competition means walking over other people. And a lot of artists they say things like, you should really just compete with yourself, try to bring out the best of you. And I agree with that. But if I'm honest, I look at artists who I think are better than me and I'm like, all right, I got you next. I got you next. But I'm not doing it in a way that's diminishing their level. I'm propping them up because I'm
right.
excited for them. It has nothing to do with them. It's just when I see somebody who's a little outside of my level, it just makes me be like, all right, I'm coming for you, dude. And I mean it as a positive thing. It's a
No,
sign of respect. And
I
like that fuels me, man.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
how you get better. I mean, it's funny. Like, I didn't think about sports, even though probably should have when you say
Yeah.
competitive. But I do like sports, and that's definitely one area where I am competitive. Even though I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily great at any particular sport, but if I'm going to play a sport, I'm I'm going to play to win. And bring up tennis, right?
Yeah.
The only way you can get better at tennis is playing people who are better than you.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, the only way you're going to learn, you know, if you're in a band, the only way you're going to play better is if you play with, musicians who are better than you, who are going to challenge you or who are going to force you to
Right.
put more effort into it.
I just bring that whole thing up just because I think if I mention I'm competitive, people are like, "Oh, I got to look out for him. He might like slight me or something." It's like, no, it's nothing like that. It's once whatever it is, it's just I'm trying to bring the best out of me. But sometimes I'll look at people like that are on a technical level better than me, and I'll learn from them. So, and like a lot of people, who are friends in the community that are visual artists, they've been like, "Man, Lee, you've got a lot better than last year." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I've surrounded myself with people like you. It's leveled my game because I see you guys going, and I'm learning from you. But it's mostly just being around and being accepted. I'm like, because I was an outsider for such a long time with art, I was like, man, I actually do belong here, and I'm going to show that I belong here, and I'm going to put out the best work I can. I'm going to always reach higher." Like, and that's the thing is, a lot of artists, they get to these different levels and then they plateau for a long time. And you're always going to plateau a little bit, but you got to make those plateau things really, really short, because you have to have those rest points in terms of pushing yourself. But I see sometimes artists who just have been doing the exact same thing for like 5 years, and they're consistently good, but like they're not pushing themselves to the next level. And I just,
Yeah.
I don't want to hit that plateau. I'm just going to keep evolving and devolving as long as I can.
I mean, that's for sure true of photography. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure I've been guilty of it, but you know, a lot of people kind of get comfortable with what they're doing and don't necessarily push themselves to, um, you know, evolve.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, you know, it's fine if that's just what you want to do. But I've certainly like sometimes I'm like, I need to do something that makes me a little bit uncomfortable,
Oh, totally.
or you know, because that's just, you know, that's how you experience new things, you learn new things, and you know, hopefully get better at it.
Yeah. You got to fuel off that risk that everything could just mess up with the piece, you know? You got to really dive into that sometimes. And I say these things, man, I struggle with these things all the time. I mean, I say them almost as more of a way to kind of like self be like, okay, you're doing okay, keep these principles in mind and you'll do okay over the long term. But I fall short all the time. I make mistakes all the time. Sometimes I don't push myself. Sometimes I'm lazy. Sometimes I procrastinate. So anytime I say these points of advice, it's not that I haven't struggled with them and I continue to struggle with them. They're almost more for myself. And if you guys benefit from them, it's win-win, right?
Right. I mean, look, and the other thing that I would say is a lot of times the only way to learn something is by fucking up, you know, making mistakes.
Totally.
Because you know, it's like I remember even like in school when I took tests, I never remembered the stuff I got right. I would only remember the stuff I got wrong. You know.
Yeah.
um, so I want to talk about the connection of your art to music.
Sure.
What you know, we talked about how your art evolved. How did your music taste evolve?
All over the place, man. So, I mean, growing up, listening to a lot of classic rock with my family, but their taste was explicitly Midwestern, So like, there wasn't like a lot of Southern rock, even though I'm in the South and have been basically raised in Georgia my whole life. So it was a lot of Boston, Journey, Fleetwood Mac, Meatloaf. They loved Meatloaf, man. So then another inspiration. First time I saw Meatloaf "Bad Out of Hell" cover, and then
Right,
listen
right,
to the
right.
music. I was
That's
very
iconic. Yeah.
I was very disappointed in the music at the time. I actually love it now because it's fond memories, and it's actually pretty good in my opinion. But dude, that Richard Corbin "Bad Out of Hell" painting, and then the follow up was Michael Whalen for "Bad Out of Hell" too. Like that shit is just like that inspired me a ton too as a kid. The only thing is demonic or monster like, but I was very drawn to the classic rock stuff. Then I got into Led Zeppelin and AC/DC later, but my parents never listened to that stuff. They didn't listen to stuff that went too hard. It was all about that kind of like stadium Boston Journey kind of sound. That was really big.
Okay.
So then the first time I heard something that was heavy in a contemporary sense, and remember I'm 32, so some of these references, like I get that they're not going to resonate with people who are older. They're going to be like,
Us
"Oh, that's
old
lame."
folk.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
No. It's. I'm kidding.
you are what you are what you are. I don't like when people are ashamed of their age in either way.
No, everybody's a product of their generation away.
Yeah. But like this was like a genuinely powerful experience for me, man. I was in the basement of my friend who was just right up the street, and the older brother came down. He had this CD and he put it in. Track number like 4 was a song called "Crawling." And it was a song. It was by Linkin Park, and that was the first time I ever heard yelling in a song. And I remember being electrified, dude, being like 10, and just like I had never heard anything like it. I was chasing it, and I was trying to figure out what the name of that band was forever. And this is funny. I thought the name of the band was Limp Bizkit, not Linkin Park. So then I tried to buy a Limp Bizkit album, and then my parents like heard, they're like, "No, you can't fucking buy this." They didn't say F word,
Well,
but like,
there was some
I
yelling
got,
there too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I totally got confused. But then I found it was Linkin Park, and I was completely obsessed with that band. I had Hybrid Theory and Meteora and those things. Like I just listened to them all the time, all the time. And then, even before that, dude, Product of Our Time. When I was 6, I liked NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. Like that was the thing. 2000, like Y2K. That's like my generation.
Yeah. Well, look, I think people are naturally drawn to things that are catchy. I mean,
Yeah.
writing a catchy song is not easy. I like some pop songs. I'm,
Well, the story behind NSYNC and Backstreet Boys is very interesting story from like a business and like a cultural perspective. Like there's a book called The Song Machine, and it's all about those hit makers and the Swedish influence.
Mhm.
Dude, extremely good book. Even if you don't like that music, you got to admit, like the mechanisms behind the overall music scene are interesting, even if you don't like that shit.
Yeah, and
I've always
yeah, I
found
mean,
that stuff cool.
I look a book. My wife is a big fan of that music, and she's a little bit closer to your age, so
Yeah.
um,
But
that's
then
pretty.
from there, new metal was the thing. But specifically for me, it was Slipknot. Slipknot was
Mhm.
huge. I was obsessed. My friends, like we like made up like our own like masks and stuff. And
Right.
I mean, it was just product of time. And
Yeah.
I still think those early Slipknot albums are good. I don't care if it's not cool or whatever. Shit's pretty aggressive to me, and like it's just so deep in there. There's no way to just
Yeah,
dismiss it.
and I always say I always feel like those things that you're exposed to early on have an outsized influence because
Oh, they do. 100%.
you know it, because it's something you haven't experienced before, and that stuff sticks.
Yeah,
It's core memory, so to speak, right? Um,
totally.
so yeah, whether it's Slipknot or whatever for you, or when I remember when I first heard industrial, like came FDM or whatever, and I was like, shit, that's um,
Yeah.
or even when I first discovered heavy music, which is like in camp, summer camp, when I still couldn't really speak English. My the kids who were in my bunk who from like Long Island, who were kind of helped me out because it's not easy being a foreign kid. But they were into mostly classic rock, and that's how it evolved my love of Floyd.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
which by the way, that was a band that resonated with me not only musically but visually with Hypnosis and Storm Ferguson.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of like of
Creative
surrealism,
photography and
the
stuff.
way the way he used photography in camera to still create surrealistic art was, I mean, I thought it was really cool. So that definitely spoke to me. Um, but yeah, at some point they played Slayer, so Slayer became the first
Oh, yeah.
first heavy band. But it was really Metallica that I got into originally. Metallica and Guns N' Roses. So I mean, as cliche as that is, hey, you're a kid, right? So
Yeah, and like I mean, I'm like a metalhead, right? Like for sure. I mean, I wouldn't have nearly 2,000 metal CDs if I wasn't one, but like half my listening is non-metal. Like I have no shame with that. Like I don't have to pretend I'm like this giant only metal dude. Like I love all types of music, and I've always been that way with just like being a sponge. And I was listening to, like, I got into the Beatles at the same time I got into Slayer. Because here's my listening habits, man. If I want to truly feel the extremity of metal, I
mhm.
have to completely contrast it. So my
Yeah.
my playlists are literally fucking, I go from Nithing, which is like intense, brutal slamming death metal, to Enya, and then back. And I'll do that shit all the time
I,
because
I I
I
agree. I
truly
think
feel the power of both when I do that.
yeah, because again, I talk about dynamics all the time, but you gotta have contrast, otherwise it loses its power. You know, bands that are super heavy all the time are tiring to me because okay, like one song is cool, but I'm like after like song number three, I'm like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
It's lost its impact. But yeah, I when I was in you know when I was in college, and this is very, very early internet days, so we didn't really have, Spotify or anything like that. I mean, there was Napster started coming around, but at that point, it's still physical media. I I literally had 100 CD changer. It was like a
Oh
carousel,
wow.
and I would put it on shuffle, and it would just play random shit, in my collection. And I don't know, it was fun. To was like, oh hey, I haven't heard this song in a while. That's cool.
And then like the band that kind of brought everything together really, and I bet for you too, is Opeth, man.
Yeah,
I got obsessed with Opeth. Like, I mean, and that band, that's never left. I have the same love that I do now than I did then. That was probably one of the first like truly timeless metal bands that I really, really got into. And
yeah,
like for me, it was Ghost Reveries, dude.
mm. Yeah,
Dude,
and that's another band where
I'm gonna
I thought they
acknowledge
did.
the chat here. I've seen Jeff.
Oh yeah, so I was gonna talk about this. Yeah, so that was another thing, right? Bef- Before you could check out everything on the internet, I would shop for music, and man, album covers played such a big part in what I would go for, not go for.
Oh yeah.
So I've definitely been turned off by bad art and turned on. I bought CDs just because they look cool.
Yeah, a lot of stuff really hasn't aged that well. But then I kind of like there's like a charm to it now, especially if the music's good. If it's like really bad artwork, but the music's really good and it's from that era, like I'll even try to seek that out more because it's such a time and a place and it can trigger kind of that nostalgia, even if I hadn't heard that band until recently. Um, but yeah, dude, Opeth was big. And then another thing too is so I went to college and I've always loved metal. That's never wavered, but this is what probably some people don't know or they'll be confused by. I basically joined. It was it's like a band that sounds kind of like classic rock, but then we fit in the jam band category, and like in the South, jam bands like Widespread Panic and stuff like that. That's pretty big, and it's a whole
Right.
different scene. But
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
exposed to that, and I was in that for like 6 years, man. So like, I kind of have like a whole tangential past of basically being like part hippie in a way, and like that's part of my lineage too, man, which is interesting. And like, sure, there's like some cringy stuff with that life path, but I did learn some things from like kind of a more bohemian lifestyle in like my 20s and then kind of came back around. I never lost metal, but I was in Prague and like some of the jam band stuff that I still think is good, like Humphreys McGee, amazing live band. But
Uh,
death
Another one
metal
that
kind of came back.
Hypnosis did art for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Was like something bottom or whatever, right? With the I don't know. I think maybe I could be getting it confused, but yeah, there's like one cover that they did.
There was at least one. I just remember it from Storm's book. Stuff you did for other
Good,
bands.
good. I mean, talented band for sure, man. Um,
But I don't even think that's necessarily that weird. Like, so I have a couple of friends who I met through the goth scene. So obviously we
yeah,
all like goth industrial music, but their biggest love musically was, funny enough, was Slayer and the Dead. You
yeah,
know,
man.
they followed both bands around when they were younger. So
See, I
it
never had the dreads, dude, but yeah, I went to a Fish show once, and like,
was,
that's the thing is, I was like the dad hippie. I was like the guy who like kept everybody in charge, like I kind of kept everybody in line. So I was like the organizer kind of person. But and yeah, dude, hippies annoy the shit out of me sometimes. It's just like the music. Here's the take, man. I feel like the closest there is to like an improvisational, like jammy type of extreme metal band is like a Rancy Pazuzu. I saw them live and they were literally improvising on stage and jamming. And like
mm,
that is like missing from extreme metal because everything is like to the click, same
right, right, right.
solos, same set list every night. Dude, that's the coolest thing with bands that have the jam band mindset, like King Gizzard, for instance. A lot of people love them, dude. They're basically a jam band mindset. Every night's a different set. That takes a lot of work. They have people traveling with them. There's this energy, there's this life to it, and like everyone's excited because they don't know what they're gonna play. Like that's the one thing with metal that I feel like there's no band stepping up, changing their set list every night, jamming live. Like, dude, why not? Like,
Yeah.
if I was in a death metal band or whatever, first of all, I can't blast that well, but if I was in a metal band, I would incorporate some type of improvisation because that's an innovation that is not being exploited right now that I'm like gung ho on. I feel like somebody needs to take that concept because when you don't know where the song's going to go, that's exciting.
Yeah.
It can
Yeah.
go off the rails at any moment. That's exciting.
Yeah. Again, that goes back to where I love music that surprises you. And not all surprises are good, but you don't want it to be too predictable. I always say like the goosebump moments, right?
Yeah.
When something hits you you weren't expecting, it's just man.
That's a
And
good point with Jeff too. I haven't heard Psychotic Waltz, but if they do any of that and they have some extreme tendencies, then they're filling that void that I'm thinking.
I yeah, I mean there's I don't know how necessarily improvisational, but there's a new Monkey Free album that came out, which is kind of like a psychedelic stoner heavy rock band,
Sounds up my
whatever.
alley.
And I really dig that. I made the comparison to Jeff at some point. It's like if Ozric Tentacles were heavy, you
Oh,
know.
another good band.
Yeah, I mean
Awesome
it's
Tentacles.
yeah, I dig I dig both. It's like I wanted to have that kind of almost improvisational energy, not maybe or jam energy, but in a heavier setting, and yeah, you don't get that a lot, but
Yeah, I think Earthless does some like jamming and improvisation. Like, so it's easier probably for like a stoner or like a doom band, and like that's cool that they take it. But like, I don't know, man. I just see some things, and I'm calling them innovations just for the sake of simplicity. But I think of labels like Grimestone Records. That's like an innovative label. They're doing like this weird, like, first of all, they have an innovative aesthetic where it's kind of gimmicky and funny. But then their music is like kind of like low bit and like there's like a humorous element to it as well. And like that to me is like filling a void that previously wasn't there. So like what's the next innovation? And in my mind, it has to be something that is heavily influenced by non-metal and
yeah,
drawing from those strengths of the other genres that people are just turning their nose up at. Like, fine. If you don't like the Grateful Dead, fine. But dude, that band worked their ass off. They have diehard fans. They have extremely strong brand and iconography. Like the Dead did so much right, and their whole story is fascinating too. Like I have
yeah,
books, documentary. They're they're one of their primary artists, Rick Griffin, is one of my like top 20 favorite visual artists of all time. Like, so we're talking about differentiation, right? For musical differentiation, I feel like we could tap into that. Visual differentiation, same thing. So talking about my work, I don't want to look like Mark Riddick at all. I want to look like a guy who is heavily influenced by psychedelic and Japanese art, and then adds a level of intricacy and detail because I just can't help myself, and then brings in some darker elements and creates something that people haven't seen in the scene. That's my
yeah,
vision
for sure. I
because I don't want to
definitely
look like anybody else.
I love when you get influences from others. I always feel like my favorite bands are all a little bit harder to to squeeze into a genre because it's
Yeah,
just they borrow different elements, and that's what to me makes them interesting. I don't know if I listen to too many bands who are necessarily like prototypical this or that,
yeah.
proto death or proto black or whatever. I don't know. I don't get into that as much, but yeah, there's some. I gotta check out these recommendations here because I have not heard of these. Um, where's- yeah, yeah, I can see the King Buffalo comparison. I almost do like that they're instrumental and the vocals don't really distract from the.
Yeah, see, that's a painted doll. That sounds awesome. Yeah, late 60s San Francisco art and music, highly influential to me, man. That's way up my alley. Like, I love Love the band, Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver Messenger Service is great. What else? Well, then also in the late 60s and early 70s, that's when uh, I know people only know him from the shitty T-shirts, but Ed Hardy took Japanese art and created tattoo imagery based off that, and that was highly influential for that movement. Then we have Robert Crumb, we have Rick Griffin. So like, if there's any point in time that I like wish I was like a teenager in, dude, it's the late 60s and early 70s in San Francisco. It's not the same anymore, but there was
No,
magic at that
definitely
point in
not.
time, dude.
Yeah, I'm sure that had to be kind of a magical moment in
Oh yeah.
history where just things evolve naturally, and that's not easy to find, for sure. Where where when you do your art, where do you draw your inspiration from? Like, and let's say it's like a somebody we'll put it in the music perspective. If a band, let's say, commissions you to do like an album cover, what would
Yeah.
be your process?
Okay. Well, there's the business end of like just figuring out what your vision is and making sure I'm going to be gelling with you as like a client. So they would give me a rough idea. From there, I always start with shapes, right? So thumbnails. So for instance, I'm working on a piece right now, and I did a lot of thumbnailing because I knew this one was going to be hard to piece together. So you got to know roughly where the puzzle's going to go. And these are just scribbles, they don't look that great because all I'm doing is mapping out where
Right.
the shape's going to go, because I am a firm believer that people just like to look at interesting shapes and then shapes within shapes. And like that sounds so freaking stupid to say, but I feel like maybe that's something people kind of lose sight of. So I'll just literally start kind of piecing shapes together, and I'm like, okay, this flows into that. And then I'll have like I'll grab my pencil and I'm just doing really loose rhythm lines. And it's all about how everything can connect, because I want there to be a ton of movement in my art. So the first thing is shapes and movement, themes. So what is that shape going to represent? What is that going to do? Then I'm thinking style in terms of how I'm going to execute it. A lot of that's collaboration with them. So do they want a painting or do they want pen and ink? My guess, kind of as an aside, I'm probably going to get more pen and ink commissions for a while because that's what I've been producing a lot of. So it's normal for that. Whatever you put out there, if it's good, people are
Right.
just
People
going to be
assume
like,
that that's what you specialize in. Yeah.
right, right. But I'm going to be doing a lot of painting in my spare time because there's a different joy in that. But so then I have a big piece of sketchbook paper, depending on what size I'm working on. That's what I call my preliminary drawing. So it's going to be very loose, and I'm experimenting. I'm writing down notes, like actual like word notes, so I don't forget things. I then also, do I need reference for this? So, for instance, for the gas mask and hand grenades, I was very loose with my reference. I just looked up, I got about 80 images. So the research phase takes a while. And then there was nothing that was even close to what the reference looks like. So that's highly imagination type of thing. But then I'm working on a piece right now where I'm working with figures and people. And with that, I either want to take my own reference, so I'll pose and put on like a robe that's like a bathrobe if I want to be a wizard, like I'll do shit like that because it's going to be more tied into reality, you know. All those fantasy artists and illustrators of like the 70s, 50s, whatever, they're all doing that. They're all taking pictures of themselves in weird poses. That's
That's
very
it.
common. Frazetta didn't do that because he's a fucking brilliant master, but everyone else had to.
It makes me
Uh
think of doing selfies so I can figure out the lighting for a shoot.
yeah, dude, same thing. Like so much of it is, yes, you can come up with your thumbnails, but I just spend a good hour. And what I'll do is I'm usually at the gym during this kind of work, because in between sets or whatever, I can just find some images and then get it. And then, so staying on track, this piece that I'm working on now, it's Victorian and historical, so I have to do more research to be like, okay, does this actually appear Victorian? Does this kind of have that era? So I found like public domain photos of like a Victorian wedding, and I'm going to use that. And I'm going to keep it pretty close to the reference because, like, just for people to be aware, like, if art is in the public domain, that's why you can have like all these Dore like death metal album covers because you don't have to pay for anything,
Right.
and like you can do your own interpretation. No one's going to go after you, so there's no shame in that. You don't want to do it all the time because you want to have your imagination. But for this piece I'm working on now, it was keeping it pretty close to the reference, but working off of like 10 different references. So it's going to be very original at the end. But just different pieces require more of that, depending on how realistic you want it to look. So then you got your drawing down in the prelim. This is my process. This isn't how everybody does it, because this process is repetitious and it's more time consuming, but it helps me get a better result. So I'll do a very loose drawing. And then what I'll do, I'm looking over at it because I was trying to see if I have good examples. So then I will get my final paper, which is either watercolor paper or Bristol for black and white, watercolor for watercolor mixed media. And I'll get a light board out, and then I'll trace my prelim drawing and tighten it up on the final. So that way my final isn't like all raced and nasty, because if I want my art to have a lot of motion, I have to get very gestural, and I don't want to have a really rigid final. So it helps me out to like get that loose stage that's actually not in the final kind of in there. So then from there, I'll take a picture of it and I'll do a value study. So this is just copy paper, but right now I want to see, okay, where's the lighting going to hit? Where's the shadows? Basically, it's all about solving all of your problems before you get to the final, and then you can have more fun with it. So like a lot of it just comes from, don't fuck this up, don't fuck this up, don't fuck this up. So it takes more time, but like I don't just sit down and spit out something that looks as good as like that dragon. You know, that takes multiple iterations.
Right.
And like that's how most artists work, because it's all about being prepared and being self-aware with your skill set and stuff. Like if you have enough time and conviction, pretty amateur artists can produce a really good piece. It's just about being patient and being prepared, I think. I mean, yes, you got to like learn your chops, but you'd be amazed what some like really beginner artists can do if they have those principles in check. Because I think what's more common is somebody who thinks they're a good artist, but they're not really there yet. And they just think everything should be effortless when they're not there yet. You're not Frank Frazetta. You're not yet, you know? So I think that's maybe something people get wrong.
Yeah, I think that's true for music too. And
I mean, I could draw maybe the head. I mean, I don't know, dude. I mean, it's not that I can't sketch. It's just there's a lot of work that goes behind it, and it doesn't feel like work because I love it. But if I wasn't obsessed, I wouldn't be doing this, and that's the case for most artists. There's an obsession.
Right. I think, like I said from the beginning, it's you have passion for it, and I think you can tell that of people if they're not really passionate about their work, it shows.
Totally.
So I have to get into this horrible topic, but let's talk about AI.
Okay, sure.
You know, because you posted that video and you know, talking about it somewhat, and it's made more and more news. From my perspective, as a photographer, right? There's a photographer I followed for many years. She's originally Chinese, I believe. I can't remember her name right now, but she went by Z Motion as kind of like the trade name, and she's part of a current ongoing lawsuit against Midjourney. And you know, she posted like now that there's a new new version of Midjourney, version 6, I think, and now they have a new feature where you can give it an image and you can let it describe the image, basically image to text, which you can then use as a input to generate more images, right?
There's like
And
style guides. That's what they call them,
right,
or whatever. The
right. And part of that description is sometimes the name of the artist, and she found like her
Yep.
name has been used like 20,000 times.
Yep.
And that's I think, as an artist, has to be, I don't know,
I was
heartbreaking.
reading up on that today. Oh yeah, that's the worst. I got something to share on that. So first thing is I have my own there's what I think for society at this exact point in time because it's shifting all the time, and then there's what I personally enjoy and feel for myself. You know what I mean? Like just because I have a certain opinion doesn't mean I think I should prescribe it to everyone in a lot of cases. So this is from the AI ethics spectrum from Kristen Zern-Gibel. I could be mispronouncing that, but this is the question that she posed in terms of AI ethics. So it says, "What do you think is fair to other artists?" Question mark. One, this is the first option. Use no prompt-based AI generation at all. Two, use no artist name in prompts. Three, only use deceased artist names and prompts. Four, use living artist names and prompts shown only with permission. Five, use living artist names and prompts but credit them publicly. Six, use living artist names and prompts but don't profit commercially. And seven, use living artist names and prompts and profit commercially.
Mhm.
So here's the thing, man. I put out the AI video. Most people understood where I was coming from. I'm very much a shades of gray person. Black and white thinking type people, I don't gel with usually because I think the world is highly nuanced, highly complex. And unfortunately, we're sometimes spoon fed things that are black and white, and that rubs me the wrong way. So I bring up those 7 points because it shows the spectrum in which we're going to have to think about AI in the future, generative AI and visuals, in terms of what's acceptable and what's not as a society. Right now, people are still at square one, just being like, no AI or yes AI. And it's like, it's way more nuanced at this point, if you really want to go deep. So, yes, for me, it's no AI because it's a slippery slope. But eventually, it will evolve to more of those 7 principles, which what is right and what's wrong. So I bring that up mostly in the sense of like that's where I think we'll get to in terms of as a society, in terms of this conversation. It's going to be more nuanced. Right now, it's very much in its infancy, and I'm at square one where don't use generative AI at all because the only people that are profiting are the big companies. We're just being exploited. Everyone's
Right.
being exploited, but I don't know if that's going to be realistic. So I think we're going to have to think more on those 7 principles. To me, the using of artist names at all in prompts is as bad as it gets because that is it. People, the style stealing guides are so good right now. You really can't tell, and it's fucked up.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too is I see people commenting. I'm not trying to throw shade. You see, I get fired up about this shit. People that are like AI art doesn't look good, it has no soul in it. Right now, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
it's
It's
so fucking close.
it's in a baby stage right now, and
Yeah.
already like I've they have those like can you tell it's AI quiz. I fail them now.
Yes.
Like
So
months ago, I did better. Now, no.
the argument of whether AI art looks good or not, it's not the ground you want to stand on if you want to be anti-AI because that's such it's literally next week. That's the thing, man. I, it really comes down to ethics in terms of if you're going to be for it or against it. I think those are really the only grounds that are going to hold up over time because yes, AI art's just going to look better and better and better, and the style theft thing is so messed up. So I'm passionate about it. I don't like to rub people the wrong way, but I think there's enough content out there by really good artists who have a really compelling case that if you're open-minded enough and you're not an artist, you if you come with that mindset of learning and empathizing, you'll get it. But I see too much now of people who are for AI or they don't get the implications that when I see that stuff, it does it's painful because
Yeah,
it shows me what I already know, which is that there's always a percentage of the population that is heartless, you know, when it comes to online presence and stuff. And that's a sad thing to see.
yeah. I think unfortunately most people just don't care. You know, they're like, oh, cool, I can make cool avatars. You know,
Yeah, and
and
like I don't want to make people feel guilty either. That's the
yeah,
thing too, is like, dude, I don't
and there's a difference between having fun with that
yeah,
versus let me create an artwork based on the style of this person without their knowledge, credit or
and then
anything.
yeah, and
It's
then
just
pretend to be them and then sell it. And that's where the
oh yeah,
gifting
oh yeah.
comes in.
What's the other thing? Like there's like these Etsy shops all over the place now that are just selling this AI creator art,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
people buying it don't know, It's
yeah,
just,
it's messed up, man. And
I don't know.
that's why I'm also committed to staying in traditional art and not going digital is because of this stuff. Because
Yeah,
it's one way I can prove that I don't use it. But here's the thing, man, like traditional artists can literally make a prompt, print it out, pretend it's their work too. Or they could trace over the AI and like basically make recreate it. So like there's ways to even,
yeah. I mean,
get your
but
way through that. But
yeah, technically, if you have, if you have a bit of your own work, you could train a model to create your work based on that input.
yeah, but no,
Um,
here's the thing with the models, man, and a lot of people get this wrong too. Once you have fed something into the model, you can't erase it from it. It's because it's iterative. It builds upon that. So like you can't there's no going back with this same model. You have to literally start over in terms of the one that Mid Journey and everyone's using. Because the model that is gigantic that a lot of these are pulling from initially was used only for research purposes, but then the cat got out of the bag too quick.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? People who do this don't think about ethics, right? They don't think about what's going to happen, right? Whether it was Stable Diffusion or whether it was the large language models that ChatGPT uses,
Yeah,
they're like, oh well, in order to make a model really good, we need a very large training set.
yeah,
So let's just grab it. We're not gonna, it's the ones like, oh, we're not gonna ask for permission. We're just gonna do it because it's there. And look, I posted my work on DeviantArt, and DeviantArt was one of the main sources for the Stable Diffusion models,
yeah.
because there's a lot of art there. So who knows how much my should contribute to it? Probably not much, but still, it's once you do that, you can't put it back.
No, man. It's like that's the other thing too is like, why do I even want to be a bigger artist now? I'm just gonna have a bigger target on my back. So
Mm.
maybe I just keep
Yeah,
my
yeah.
follower count to under 10,000, and I have my fans, and I carry out my day where my art isn't my livelihood. And for me, maybe that's the best thing for my mentality. I'm not saying that for everybody, just speaking for myself. So
I guess that's like a measure of of if your name works as in a prompt, then I guess you're you're you made to a certain point in your art, but
but yeah, I
which is
mean, I have
a
friends who
sad
are
kind
in
of
those
thing.
things, man, because Midjourney had that data leak and they looked themselves up, and these people are in the metal scene, dude, and like
Yeah,
if there's one thing I want to just be clear, I don't want to make individuals really feel that guilty about it. If all right, if you're on number 7 and you're taking somebody's style, you're putting their name in there and you're selling commercially, yes, you can feel guilty. You can feel like a piece of
yeah.
shit.
I think if you're
But
making money on it, you can feel guilty, but obviously the most guilt is who's making the most money, which is
the companies,
OpenAI. You
yeah.
know,
So like I'm not trying to make enemies out of people because like I don't really give a shit. It's just it's a whole ethical thing and yeah, like I said, I don't there's I see people like doing just like casual little things or even funny things with like the cursed AI Facebook thing. It's
Yeah,
like, yeah, it's funny, man. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to spend time creating these things, but I'm not going to make you feel guilty about it. Like, I got better things to do with my life, man.
yeah. Well, plus it's an impossible task. I mean,
Yeah.
you have limited emotional energy, and you have to pick where you spend it. And
Yeah, dude. I want to read more books. I want to get more off my phone, man. I'm sick of this shit. Because all it does is just make me it just gets an emotional reaction out of me, which is the whole fucking point. So,
yeah,
emotional manipulation of this day and age is like rampant, dude.
all the algorithms are built on that, and
Yeah.
not even necessarily intentionally. It's just human nature, and then unfortunately, the algorithms feed on that. And that's really, really scary. I think because it's getting worse, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, totally.
So I don't know how you turn that around, um, but also like I don't know, like as an artist, you know, where do you? Because sometimes, there's you follow, you have Instagram, right, where like everybody's on Instagram, and you can see
Right.
so much amazing art there. But it's like, do you let that inspire you, or does it become like a paralysis of comparison where?
I'm past that point now.
And I'm
Where I
not
don't
asking you, I guess, individually. I guess I'm just saying, like, I think that's a struggle a lot of people
Oh yeah,
might
that's
run
definitely a
into.
problem. I know, no, I've been there for
Mhm.
sure. I just that's to me, it's in your art journey, there's different like battles you gotta face, you know what I mean? Like literally like an RPG, you know? That's one of them is getting over the comparison syndrome. And like, I mean, I fall back into it sometimes, but like maybe for like 1 hour and then I pick up the pencil and just start drawing again and it's gone. So much of it, I think, is spending too much time on your phone and not enough time with your phone over here and just drawing.
Yeah, yeah,
Like you,
that's the hardest thing, I think, sometimes
yeah,
is
it you have to just love the process of drawing and creating and maybe even making mistakes. If you don't love that process, then you're going to fall more into the comparison thing because you're going to be too worried about the end result. And I say this, it's still very difficult even now, but when you get better and you get through all those learning experiences and you start actually doing some work that can turn some heads, that feeling usually goes way more. So you just have to push through it. There's no other way around it. Like just like sports, there's always somebody better. You're always gonna
yeah,
get knocked down if you're playing football or whatever. Like you got to learn those like tough lessons. Like if getting really good at art was easy, it would have no value, which is why AI eventually is just going to be. In a lot of cases, I think it will be more like empty calories. And since everyone can create it, it has no value then. But then handmade art, either digital or you know traditionally, if it has a person's signature style and it's created from that person, it should have value, at least to the
yeah.
people who value art to begin with. That's the other thing too, is AI art appeals to people who have no value of art usually to begin
Right,
with.
and you have very little to actually, that you want to spend on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think physical art is going to have some added value now because now it's going to be a little bit more unique, and it's not just digital prints. Like getting an original is going to, I think, original art is might have more value maybe. But yeah, Jeff, we're gonna now that you have so many hours of content that you've created, we're gonna build a large language model of you, and we're gonna create a Jeff bot. This is gonna be in
That'd be a
existence
character.
forever.
I don't know. I hope my rant came off as coherent at least for the folks and not just boring them.
No, for sure. And it's interesting. I think most creatives that I know are pretty adamant against art, but AI. But the one guy I mentioned, Stephen Archer. I don't know. he takes like, I guess, a bit more of a pragmatic approach where he's like, well, you know, you can't put this back in the bag. So I guess he uses it to, like, let's say, create studies for his art. So if he's like, he made a comic book about this giant wolf. It was like um, and he needed like, he was, this is just from a post of his, like he was described as like, well, he needed to a particular angle from underneath the wolf because it's a giant wolf,
Yeah.
but he couldn't find that reference image anywhere on the internet because I guess not too many people photograph wolves from that angle.
Yeah.
And he used AI to create. Now I don't know how accurate necessarily that creation was, but so I mean, you know, you can potentially use it in non-malicious ways. You know,
Yeah, I don't mind that as like a reference. I think, but this is not as much an ethical thing as a. Well, I guess it kind of is, but it's a pet peeve. I know some painters that ever since AI came out, their paintings look way too much like the AI. So it's like, okay, you can use it as a reference, but to me, when you get to a certain level, the best use of reference is glance at it and then look away for like a while and put it aside. Like when you get too fixated on your reference and it's like it's binding you down,
right?
especially if that's AI, that's gonna hold you back. So it's more of like a
Because
if
now
I'm
you're
just
just copying. Yeah,
yeah, and it's just like it doesn't look like you anymore. So if he did that, put it aside after he got the proportions and just like the rough thing, and he knew how to like construct an image beyond that, I think that's just being. It's not something I would do at this point because I'm still not ready to open up that. I don't even want to know how to use AI. I'm going to make
yeah,
myself dumb to it.
yeah.
But if I did know how to use it and I was okay with it, that would be the only way I would use it. And so I have no shade against that guy. That's a smart way of still being an artist and using it. But I want to play dumb, dude. I want to play dumb to even knowing how to do a lot of stuff digitally. Like I literally just want to look at people from like the 80s and before and just exist in that realm, but be my own artist, man. Like that's just a personal thing for me. I don't want to put that on anybody else. It's just like if that's the art that you think about all the IP, right? Think about like why are we making another fucking Ghostbusters movie? It's because people know that IP because it came from that time. So what I'm trying to do is I can't be in that time, but if I can create my own time machine with only getting books and stuff that are from the past, maybe I can create something that has more of that retro vibe and feel that to me is more authentic to me and something that I want to put out there. So that's a personal choice. That may be a dumb one, but it's the one I'm doing,
No,
for my art.
I think it makes sense. Yeah, it's yeah. I think another thing, you know, again, like on DeviantArt, right? DeviantArt is now over. You know, it's full of AI because they don't. Um,
They don't monitor it all. They
they
don't
don't
care.
monitor. I mean, they didn't make it a rule. They're basically
I haven't been
whatever.
on DeviantArt since
I mean,
2011.
listen, they put their own AI generator in there, so you can actually do it in the site itself. Which I don't know. I don't know if other people get good results. Personally, when I've played with it, I have not.
Yeah.
But I feel like I don't know. It's first of all, like when I scroll on my feed and I see just people will post like many variations because it's, you know, it takes a few seconds to generate one, so they'll just generate a whole bunch. And you're like, well, what's your now? I don't want to look at it because I see 20 similar images. It
What's the
just
point? Where's your
loses
statement?
value to me. And what's the you know I forget how somebody defined art, but like I remember like intention was part of it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
What's your attention where when you're? I mean, I guess yeah, you're given some instructions, but honestly, you know, you're a lot of these people are just putting in a prompt and then just picking whatever looks coolest from the results.
Well,
But
that's the
that's
other thing. There's like a fallacy too with some of these AI people that they think that like the skill of like building all these prompts is like something that's really like lofty and intense. There's a study that you could put a very simple prompt and a highly rendered detail one, and the output of the work in terms of the quality is not that different at all.
yeah,
So much of it is just random, and that's why it's not protected by copyright law because it's seen by the government, even as it is right now, pre all those lawsuits. It's not copyrightable because it's purely random. There's no intention, like you're saying.
Yeah.
So Deicide's album cover, anyone can print that. If you feel like printing that, you can't. They can't actually enforce that. You can't put the Deicide logo on it because that's trademark. But you could take that image if you just have it. They don't own that. If they try to say they're owning it, fuck them, dude. They don't own it.
So I didn't know about this. So they used an AI image for a cover.
Pretty dang sure they haven't admitted it, which is also cowardly as shit. Because if
Well,
you're gonna use it, own it. So yeah, I think
did they
Deicide are a bunch of cowards. Personally.
Did they credit anyone for the cover?
No.
Interesting. Because
But if you don't even own up on using it, I think that's even worse. Just admit
yeah,
it. You're deleting all these comments. You're banning people. Total cowards.
Yeah, I didn't know about this, but I was curious if I'm sure bands have already started using. I'm certainly.
Oh yeah, dude.
I mean, certainly like smaller people I know have, but I wasn't sure if like major bands have yet.
Oh yeah, they have.
You know, bands that can very easily afford a real artist. You know what I mean?
Makes no
Which
sense.
is
It might be, it's a lot of the labels too, man. I'm giving Deicide a lot of flack, but I think a lot of it's their labels just being idiots, man.
I can see that, but yeah, I mean, look, I'm not always gonna know, but if I'm aware that something uses AI art, I'm not paying for it.
Yeah,
that's I can't, you know, I can't. I don't have the power to do much in this fight, but for my personal,
I mean, dude,
personal
AI
ethic,
riffs are going to be around in like a matter of months.
yeah.
The speed in which this shit goes, like, I still think people aren't maybe used to, they're not ready for it. Like,
No.
AI music is very, very close. I mean, it's already there, but like, I'm talking about even being used in bands more frequently, or it's going to be more assisted because
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I can see it, especially like in pop music, which has already been, production heavy anyway, but I'm sure it's going to be even more so.
It just loses. I don't know, man. I don't want to live in a world where nothing is sacred or valuable anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a world anyone wants to live in, as far as I know.
Yeah, and again, I think that that heightens the value of actually seeing a band play real instruments live, because that I can't replace that, at least. So support those bands.
Yeah, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I mean, you rev me up, man. But I try not to think about this stuff too much. And like I said, I try to appreciate things that are going on today that are very respectable, but there's so much in the past. Yeah, I got some comments on the Hour of Penance thing. I'll talk about that in a second. But like, all right, dude. I just saw this past weekend, and I know everyone's hyping it up. I just saw Dune Part 2, and I am blown away, dude. That was the perfect marriage of everyone working together in perfect synergy. Acting is amazing. Visuals are amazing. The story, written by Frank Herbert, all that time, but amazing. World building, next level. They're creative with how they're taking these shots. Like, that was artistry on such a level. You got Hans Zimmer, like, I mean, I know some people are going to be throwing shade at it because when you're that good at something, somebody's going to. But like, that movie was pretty dang close to being a masterpiece, and I'm still in awe of the power of that. That's the power of true art,
Yeah.
So it's still very present today, and like, we needed Dune Part 2. Let me talk about this thing with the Hour of Penance thing.
I got to watch Dune Part 1 so I can watch Dune Part 2.
Oh,
but,
dude, I know,
and I have read the Dune
book,
book,
so
I just didn't get a chance to.
It's great, yeah. The Part 2 really pulls it all together, and it built off the first one in such a beautiful way. So it makes Part 1 even better. All right, so Hour of Penance, dude. So not only did they have the AI cover, but I saw this article that had this guy's, and it was all in quotes. It was literally directly from him. But this guy was just like saying, like, how, man, I don't want to completely get off. You can look it up. It's like a metal injection. But basically, he was just so He's like, AI is the future. Artists need to chill out. Humans aren't as valuable as they used to be. We need to embrace the future, that we're not the only people in the universe, and that technology is the next way. Basically, it was like a very anti-human sentiment, and I was
Mhm.
so confused by that. Like, how brainwashed do you have to
Who's
be?
who's buying your records, dude? Like
Yeah,
last time I checked, it was only humans.
it just makes no sense. Like, why are you dying on the hill of being anti-human and pro bot? Like, that is alien to me, dude. You have to read it, because the way he wrote everything out was way worse than even I was saying. But like, that's just the weirdest hill to die on, dude.
Yeah, that's a little.
Like, he was even saying, like, if the AI could write better music than we could, we would just release that. It's like, fuck you, dude. First of all, that's like, just it's like you're just like fucking Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, just so sad, just sulking around, just putting shit in there, writing riffs. It's just like, what do you value? It's the most pessimistic take ever. It just got me mad, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's a little weird take again, especially when you know, your
Yeah, it's
your
stupid.
customers, your
Good
clients,
point,
your
Logan.
your audience consists of 100% humans. Last time I checked, so
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I think that's the other thing too. Is like, okay, we like metal, right? And metal, there's like, you black metal, right? Maybe you're putting on makeup, you're wearing capes or whatever, but like, I still think that a lot of musicians can put that on the stage. They could put in their lyrics, they could put whatever. But when they're off stage and they're at the merch stand, they're a normal fucking dude. And like,
mhm, yeah,
I get what Logan's saying here, but like, that guy's just like way too much in his own shit. Like, dude, just get out of your own fucking ass and like, just be a normal person who likes to appreciate the art that you're creating. And I don't know. I just read that and I was like, if more people adopt this mindset, we're fucked. Because once you start going anti-human, what are we even fighting for, man?
right, right. I mean, again, last time I checked, we're still humans, so
Yeah, that's
I,
stupid.
I get it. I mean, a lot of dark, heavy music or whatever is going to have negative themes, and whether
Yeah.
it's nihilism or whatever. But um, I like to think of it. Some of the better versions of that are still have well intentioned, you know. Um, and like I listen to industrial, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously that's been, you know, uh, I, I love the old KMFDM parody song. I mean, they make parody songs of themselves, but one of the lyrics goes, "We use machines because they don't make mistakes."
Yeah.
It was a funny little line, but obviously a lot of industrial bands are. If you see them live, it's just a guy with a microphone, maybe a guy with a controlling, the synth, so some of the electronic, some of the loops or whatever. Not many of them have real live instruments, so it's always been machine heavy. But even that, I feel like
Who
I don't know.
programmed the machine?
Yeah.
Who, like, in terms of the beats and how everything lines up, who wrote the song? I mean, it's still
I, I
vastly different.
I'd still feel like I'd be disappointed if they put out like AI covers. I don't know. Even though maybe of all genres, maybe it makes the most sense for industrial, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think I'm also like, I'm not even that mad at something that's just like from the get go. It's like, okay, so there's that. Have you heard about this Frostbite War Kings? It's AI art, AI music, AI everything. But like, they're completely admitting it. They're like saying what it
Mm.
is. Like, I don't like it, but it's like,
Well, at
at
least they're
least you're
being
being
honest, I guess.
honest.
Yeah.
Yes, dude. The honesty I appreciate, because they're gonna get stuff volleyed at them and they're gonna have to be able to defend it and explain it. And like that, like I said, don't like that music. Don't I would never do that kind of thing, but I don't want to reward people. I don't want to discourage people from being honest with things like that either, because like that's kind of a slippery slope too, because like then they'll just be deceptive. Like I want to reward people being honest if possible, which would just be in my case, which I don't ever leave negative messages anyways. I don't comment on shit, but I'm not going to publicly be like, "Oh, Frostbite workings, fuck those dudes." I'm just gonna be like, "Okay, that's their thing, whatever." It's it's the deceptiveness that drives me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely at least respect honesty. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking in circles and boring these people.
It's all good. Um, well, why don't we wrap up with a little segment of? I just wanted to ask you what some of your favorites in terms of like album covers.
Hmm. Artists or specifically covers? You think? What do you
We
want?
can do both. I mean, whichever would I guess whichever strikes you.
Um, some of them are going to be obvious. I mean, I think my favorites are the Michael Whalen and Dan Seagrave covers. Like I don't think there's really any bad Dan Seagrave covers. Favorites would be Altars of Madness because it's so iconic. I really like some of the stuff he's doing now, like the previous Skeletal Remains cover, not the one that they just released. That one's still awesome, but the one from like 2021 or something. I love that cover that Dan Seagrave did. Um, so I think both of them are probably my favorites. But just like so much metal imagery is awesome. I mean, I've always loved the Merciful Fate, Don't Break the Oath, and Melissa covers a lot. There's a classic nature to them. Um, Things that are really iconic, the ones that you remember are super important. So like Rainbow with the fist, Rainbow Rising, like that's a beautifully painted cover. Um, in terms of like newer artists and newer stuff, I mean, a lot of my friends are creating really good stuff. Let's see. I really like the new Witch Vomit cover that Matt Sticker did. That was a painting by him. I thought it was really, really good. Um, I love a lot of Brad Moore stuff. I mean, he's not only a friend, but he's like a mentor, and I'm a big fan of his stuff. The new Slime Lord cover is really cool. Manner of Infinite Forms by Tumult. Very signature style from Brad. That's very important. Elran Cantor is awesome. He really never misses either. He's gotten more loose and like impressionistic as he's gone. Like the new Halloween, it's been out for a while, but that Halloween cover is really good. Um, yeah, man. I mean, I gotta say, I think most album art in the metal scene at this point is pretty dang good.
Yeah, I have to say, as a genre, man, metal is so rich and fantastic art.
Yeah.
I'm like, I almost feel bad because a lot of times I like the covers more than the music.
Oh yeah,
And
totally,
then
man.
it's like I just want to put this on my wall. I don't have to necessarily listen to it, but man, it's
I mean, sometimes I'll do that, dude. I'll buy stuff just because I like the cover and then the music's decent, but like
yeah,
it's enough for me
it,
sometimes.
it's such a I don't know. It's such a rich genre visually. I, I, it's one of the things I love about metal. And on the converse side, when the band is really like when Steven Wilson put out Future Bites, it made me angry how bad the cover, the like the artwork
It's just
was.
like his face on the front, isn't it?
It was, yeah, it was, and it was very like just like ad copy kind of, just white with bold letters, and
Right, right. He was trying to go for something modern. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
that one didn't
I,
bug me, but
I understand the intention. It just I hate it.
yeah.
So I want to see original art. So um, you know Nicholas Sundin, who used to be in Dark Tranquility? He does art for a bunch of bands now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I dig his stuff too.
I'll have to look him up. You maybe send it to me over Instagram because I have like a very long list of potential guests, and I just kind of A lot of it's just
Yeah,
impulse. You're like, all right, I'll
if you
reach
get
out to
him,
this person,
I think he'll be cool. I mean, first of all, he also makes cool music, but yeah, also found, I guess, another calling, just making art for bands.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, like that's the thing. There's way more good album art nowadays in metal bands than bad. So it's kind of hard for me sometimes to pick my favorites. Like another really good artist is Merald Van Hosterden, but he just goes by Merald. He's done like the Necrot covers, um, and Mortuous. That one with like the fire by Mortuous, that one's amazing. He did that by hand and then did some digital editing. He's one of the best in the scene as well. Adam Burke, he's a friend. Nightjar illustration. He's amazing. Like that's the thing is I these people that like I've had on the show and stuff. I mean, they're some of my favorite artists like in the world. So like it's pretty freaking cool, dude. And like it just like I said, it tries to make me up my game because I'd love to get to that level at some point. Even if I'm not making a lot of covers, the ones that I do, if they turn heads and get noticed, that's all. And I like them. I think that's the biggest thing is I like them. Then I'm happy. It's not the quantity. It's
Yeah,
like
quality over quantity for sure.
yeah, because I eventually the better I get, the more I'm just gonna have to turn people away because I have such a short amount of time for this stuff. Because I don't want to slow down the channel because that's another part of my thing, It's like it gives me purpose, dude.
Yeah,
Even
and
if
yeah,
my videos only get like 300 views, it gives me purpose.
listen, I think again, it's quality over quantity, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if anybody's watching this has not checked out Heavy Art Talk, do check it out. If is there a band on your wish list you'd want to make a cover for?
I want to work with a band on 20 buck spin just in general because they
Mm,
do a great job with the packaging, the layout, and they have a good art director who I think is just the label owner, but he has a good eye for this and he understands the power of a good image. I think he respects artists and treats them well, based on my interactions with
yeah,
artists who have worked with them. So it doesn't matter really which band, but a band on 20 bucks spin, I feel like would be a great opportunity for me. And then it could go, bigger from there. But I don't want to, like I said, I think I can produce professional work, but still, like most visual artists, they're producing their best work when they're in their 50s. It's different than sports in that capacity.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like I still have a long way to go. I still have a long way to go on my journey and like I'm not proven yet. I still have to prove myself out there. And like artists who
It
have been
was
around
just
for a long time.
hypothetical, yeah, not saying you know.
Well, I'm a realist, so I'm thinking about these things. 20 bucks spin would be that I would love to work with the band
But
on that label.
that's a good point though. A label that appreciates art. Like I was,
Yeah.
I had Mike and Ty from Replicant and Windfair earlier, and I forget what label they're on but man, they really made an effort to highlight the art, make the packaging cool, and I don't know, I love that shit. That physical package is still something that really draws me.
You
Um,
had somebody on your show from Replicant.
yeah,
I think I saw them on Bandcamp. They have a really cool cover coming out. I don't know who did that, but
They-
that one
yeah.
definitely turned my head.
So they have a new album out, or maybe it's not out yet. I forget. I don't think the whole album is out yet. I think that's coming out in April. They put out a couple of
Yeah,
tracks.
this right here, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Dude, that cover is amazing. I saw that and I was like, who the hell did that? Let's see. Let's give him credit. Uh, it's either Ali Tuttle. Yeah, amazing painting, Ali Tuttle. In case you're hearing this, I love that piece.
Yeah, and the label created like crazy, amazing packaging options for it. So yeah, that's if you're you as a band, that's where you want to be. I think for people who still buy physical mediums, make it worthwhile.
Totally, man. Totally.
All right, man. I think did did a good couple hours.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it.
That was fun, and thank you for putting up with me and for people in the chat. I've been reading your comments as we've been going, really enlightening, and no, man, I appreciate being on the channel. It's
Yeah, for
different
sure.
being on the other side of it, you know.
It's good to switch roles occasionally.
Yeah, it's good
Because
practice.
when you're a host, usually you focus more on your guests, and
Yeah, as you should, you know.
yeah, I try to let them talk because I don't have the cool stories. So, all right, man. Thank you. Thanks everybody. And go check out Lee's work.
Yeah. See you guys. It's funny too. I'll say this for anybody who's watching. So for Logan, Jeff, and Kellen who are tuning in, I was watching the traditional Metal Island all day. So like your voices have already been in my head all day. So that was a really fun episode on gas masks and hand grenades. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, sure. It's man, like I can't say enough how cool the community is, and
Yeah.
all you guys that produce this content are awesome.
Awesome. All right.
All right.
See you guys.
Cheers, everybody.